First I just want to say thank you, Brian, for doing this. I know you don't do this very often, so it means a lot to us at the firm and everybody here. They're gonna come out here and look. That line that this person needs an introduction is often used with people who actually do need introducing, right? But Brian, it needs an introduction, but I'll do it anyway, right? From co-founder and CEO of Coinbase. What more do you need? What more do you need? There we go. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Brian is going to spend the next hour with us, and I have 20, 25 minutes of some challenging questions, right? We're going to put you on the hot spot. But honestly, this is your time. What we really want to do is, part of this whole program was to kind of get you folks access to people they may not always kind of get access to in other ways, and just ask Brian anything. So I'll go for 20, 25 minutes, and then you get asked Brian questions. But maybe Brian, one good place to start off is, and we've done a few of these before. I don't think I asked you this. Right before this, we were talking about the hero's journey, and every hero has an origin. And as I was thinking about today, what struck me was about maybe 10, 11 years ago, you were probably in a similar setting at Y Combinator. So kind of take us back to the origin of Coinbase and how did you feel when you were in the audience in kind of a similar way as everyone here?
Yeah, so I was definitely in your shoes. Back in 2010, I had read the Bitcoin white paper. I had tried doing a startup in the tutoring and education space. It was kind of like a base hit, didn't really go very well. And I had joined Airbnb as an early employee to try to learn more about how to do a startup. And so I kept thinking, I really want to do another startup. I want to do another startup. And I eventually read that Bitcoin white paper, and I started to think more and more about it. So nights and weekends, I was kind of working on a prototype. I wasn't sure about myself. I didn't really know if this was the thing I wanted to go do. But I applied to Y Combinator, and that's the first time somebody actually told me, maybe you're not crazy. Like this whole Bitcoin thing is not completely nuts. Maybe we'll write you a little seed check and get off the ground. So this was probably 2012. I decided to quit my job, join Y Combinator, and I was exactly in, maybe some of the feelings are very similar to how you're feeling right now. I definitely didn't feel like anything was for sure. I felt like this was a very high-risk endeavor. I didn't really know if any of it was going to work out. I felt like maybe I have a shot at something working here, but it's going to have to, a lot of cards are going to have to flip over the right way, and a lot of hard work is going to have to happen. I was struggling to find anybody who would join my team and work with me. The early stages, it's impossible to find people to join you on these crazy journeys sometimes. I almost co-founded it with one person, and that all exploded in dramatic fashion. You might have had co-founder issues. That's like kind of the norm. Finally found the right co-founder. We got off with Fred Ursum. We got off to the races. Someone sued us like 3 months later. It's just so startups are moving from one setback to the next with enthusiasm. And if it's a complete shit show and it's chaos and nothing is working, that's kind of the default state. So you're doing it right if it feels like that. And basically you just don't give up. Like that's the main thing. A lot of times I've seen people, they have an idea, they have a team that comes together, they launch their first thing, it doesn't work, and 4 months later they have some big co-founder fight and they blow up and they all go home. And it's like, well, you didn't really try it, because there's no idea that works on the first try. You have to put something out there and then grind it out like 2 or 3 years usually to sort of talk to your customers, improve the product, talk to your customers, improve the product. And sometimes it never works, and sometimes you break through after n number of years. And last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it back to you, is if you look at almost every successful startup, it feels like it was an overnight success, but really that's just how history gets written in hindsight. If you talk to most of those founders in the early days, there was a period where any reasonable person would have quit. Nothing was working. They were in credit card debt, like they were being sued. It was like, and all of them somehow persevered and pushed through and finally found something that started to get working, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So we can talk about all kinds of lessons, but that's my memory of that time.
I want to unpack that because we are in a bear market, crypto winter, whatever you want to call it, and I want to go back, and I don't remember how the market was, but crypto was not a sure thing at the time. We're probably far from a sure thing. And you had been at Airbnb. You could have there's an alternative multiverse, Brian Armstrong, who's like a VP of engineering at a FANG company and doing pretty well. So you could probably always quit and gone back to that. So when you say don't give up in those first 6 months to a year, what kept you going?
Yeah. Well, okay, so I don't think I was really the smartest person. I met lots of people who were smarter than me. I don't think I was even that good at raising money, to be honest. I met other people who were much better at that. Fred Ersom's better at raising money than I was. But what I was very determined. And so I guess I just made a decision at a certain point, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to go all out on this thing for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And if it doesn't work, I will know that I left everything on the field, and I will go back and figure it out. But I'm not going to quit before then. And I actually made a pact with, in Y Combinator, there was a talk kind of like this. And I remember somebody, I think it was Sam Altman, he came up and was telling us how to not die or whatever. And I made a pact with one of the other teams there. And we said, I put a calendar invite in our calendars for 2 years in the future. And I said, if we're both still working on our company 2 years from now, we will drink a bottle of champagne together in San Francisco Bay. And if either one of us has quit, the minute they quit in the next 2 years, they have to buy a bottle of Dom Perignon for this other person. So a lot of people quit. 2 years into that, I'd say probably like 50, 60% of the companies in our batch, they didn't exist anymore. And me and that other guy, we did drink the bottle of champagne. It was Founders Fund, which is another company that still exists.
And who bought the champagne?
Well, we were both still working on our company, so I think we both bought whatever. But it was just a psychological thing. We were kind of like, burn the ships. We're going all in. We're not going to quit, and we're going to work 110% on this every day.
Now, the other part, which I want to tie it back to the folks here, is looking back and say the first 2-3 years of Coinbase, if you could have a do-over and you'd be like, hey, these are things that I would go back and do exactly the same way again, I would change nothing. And maybe these are some things I would maybe want to take back and change. Yeah. Now, obviously, things kind of worked out really well. Like, what do we think you'd keep, and what do we think you'd change?
Yeah. I'll start with the ones that I would keep, maybe a little easier. So I think one thing is that we waited to hire. We were actually pretty slow to hire. So, I mean, first, I couldn't find the right co-founder for a long time. So, and then Fred joined. And we didn't go try to build a big team really quick. I think we had raised maybe $600K in the seed round. But we kept interviewing people. We were meeting people, but we didn't hire anybody. And we had a ridiculously high bar. We had this saying. We said, if you're not a hell yes, you're a no. And the absence of red flags in a candidate was not a reason to hire them. You had to leave more excited than when you went in. You had to believe that this person was way better than you at something. Maybe you don't even want to work for them someday. So people have these sets of questions they ask themselves. So we kept a very high bar on hiring. We waited a long time. What else? Another thing we did was I avoided going to conferences. I avoided going to talks. I avoided just networking with random people. We were kind of obsessive. All we did was we worked on the product and talked to customers. And then we did it again. We worked on the product and we talked to customers. And there's a lot of things you can feel like you're working in a startup that are kind of like fake work. And they're really not helping you get closer to your objective. And I'll share one little quick anecdote maybe that helps people understand that. And then I'll talk about the things we didn't do as well. So I launched the first version of Coinbase, and there was no way to buy and sell crypto, by the way, in the first version of Coinbase. It was just a hosted Bitcoin wallet. And I remember I put it on Reddit or something like that. We got like a couple hundred people who came in and used it, and then they would all leave and nobody was using it. That's kind of the default state of every product that you ever launch is, you get the tech crunch of initiation and then flat. So following the advice of Y Combinator, I was like, all right, talk to your customers. So I just emailed 5 of the people who'd signed up. I was like, hey, I built this app. Can I get your feedback? So I got on the phone with like 3 or 4 of them, and I was like, I noticed you didn't come back. Why didn't you use the app? And the guy was like, well, I mean, I thought the app was pretty cool, but I don't actually even really have any Bitcoin. I just wanted to check it out. And I remember this like light bulb kind of went off in my head and was like, well, if there was like a simple way to buy it in the app, would you have done that? And he's like, yeah, probably. And so I hung up, and the next few months, I had to start to think about how do we build a simple buy button. And there was a million things that had to go into that, and bank partners and legal like licensing and all this kind of stuff. But that that's when we finally got product market fit. And that was just one example of like hundreds of times where I did that, and I was trying to find something that worked, something that worked, something that worked. So talk to your customers, improve the product. That's all we did, and that was one of the things I would recommend. Let's see, what didn't work?
Yeah. Let's get to the fun stuff.
Yeah. Let's see. I think there's periods where, kind of the opposite of the advice I just said, where we hired too fast. I mean, I'd say in 2021, 2022, we got like a little too exuberant and grew the headcount too fast, and so had to make some headcount reductions. I'd say anytime this is maybe more of a scaled thing. If you're like 2 people and you find product market fit, you can grow to 10 people or something like that in a year. So that'd be like a 5x. But if you're at scale and you try to 5x, I mean, you're going to completely blow up the company. Like all communication, culture, decision making will break down. So I probably would have hired slower in that kind of growth environment in the future. I mean, another thing that I would say is that I feel like if I put myself back where in 2012, knowing what I know now, I feel like I might have been able to grow Coinbase twice as fast.
Okay.
Well, there's a couple things. This was like classic advice that people gave me, and I thought I understood it, but I didn't actually go far enough. Well, I mean, one of the things people always said was, you actually have to delegate and stop like doing the work yourself at a certain point. When we were like 20 people or 25, and I was basically writing code for like 60% of my time. And I was having trouble letting go of that to actually bring in other people to go do more of the actual work. And I remember one of our investors came to me one time and he's like, "What percent of your time are you spending writing code every day?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe 50 or 60." And he was like, "This company is never going to grow unless you figure out how to delegate that stuff." And I had to kind of eventually let go of that. I don't know. That's one example that comes to mind.
It's interesting because I think sometimes, so I've seen people go the other way, which is they delegate too quickly and
Yeah.
they're too removed and they like lose touch with the actual realities of how things work in the company.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to. So
Possible to mess it up both ways.
Oh yeah.
I agree.
Oh yeah. One of the things I love about Brian is, and by the way, folks haven't seen, like Brian has a lot of podcasts and content out there, and you should watch him because you are, and I'm not saying just to flatter you, you're kind of a very self-aware person and you're very transparent about who you are, in ways I think a lot of other CEOs are not, which I always admire. And so when you look back in that era, or maybe even the last 10 years, what kind of, when you look at a CEO, what are skills, behaviors that you were like, hey, you were just naturally born with and you were good at? And other skills and behaviors which you maybe had to learn or hire around or painfully realize that you didn't have that? Because I think this is something which you've always been a little transparent about and I always enjoyed hearing that.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the things that I was naturally good at was I was just very even keeled. So it's just kind of my personality. Like, I mean, I feel like stressed at times for sure, and I can talk about how to manage stress if people want to. But I think that the world might be blowing up, and the site is down, and like people are upset with us, and we're getting sued. And usually my mindset is just like, okay, great. Like, how do we solve it? And then, by the way, the flip side of that is when things are going really well, sometimes people are like, why aren't you happier? Like, why aren't you celebrating? And I'm just like, I don't know, this is my happy face, whatever. So I'm just like very even keeled. And then, I was analytical, I was an engineer. So those were sort of the natural things. But I was not good at being a CEO in other ways. I mean, I had never managed anybody. And so I had to learn that. And I had a number of like executive coaches and people like that who sort of helped me learn a little bit of people management. I don't think I was very confident as like a public speaker or even externally, like in fundraising situations and stuff like that. I was always when I was in my 20s, I went to like Toastmasters, which was like a public speaking club. I'm not even sure if I'd recommend it. It was okay, but like I was just trying anything at that point to try to learn how to stand in front of an audience and like speak. And you might be wondering right now, maybe he seems like he's speaking fine, but this is like the 1,000th time I've done it over the last 10 years. So it's like you can get better at anything with reps, but I'm talking about early on. Let's see. I mean, what else was I not good at? I mean, nobody's good at everything. So you have to find people to compliment you, right? Like, it's sort of, I actually really believe in this idea of like double down on your strengths and don't try to get good at you can turn like a D- into like a C+, but you can't turn it into an A. So, like Coinbase wouldn't have existed if I didn't find other people around me that complemented my skill sets.
It's actually
Yeah.
it's true for even I think the firm at A66, like Mark, Ben, Chris. One of the things is like we want to find the Avengers, and then you want to have them amplify their superpowers, because I've never seen anybody become successful by mitigating their fixing their weaknesses.
Yeah.
Right? You always try and stand out in the thing that you are really unique at.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to get to some of the maybe darker moments of Coinbase, or some of the harsh moments, which is you talk about even keel through stress.
I guess, sorry, I had one final thought on that,
Yes.
which is that I actually had like a lot of self-doubt about whether I could even be a CEO, to be honest. And maybe, I don't know if this is helpful for people, but I mean, I thought of myself as an engineer, right? And I was like really introverted. And I had this vision in my head of like CEOs are these kind of like military generals that like bark orders at people and like charge that hill and this and that. And there was like, I always ran into these like really charismatic people, and I was like, man, like how do they do that? And so I thought maybe I wouldn't be a good CEO, but what I realized eventually was that there's lots of different kinds of CEOs. Like I've met CEOs that are like amazing at sales and market. They're just geniuses on that, like in marketing. And then there's people who are like operational experts. And then there's people who are deeply technical. And then there's people who are really charismatic leaders. And so you can really be any kind of CEO you want. And it was funny, for a long time I even had trouble like saying I'm the CEO. It just felt like weird to me. I was like, yeah, I'm an engineer who's like currently doing the CEO job or something. I had all these like weird ways of saying it. And it took me like 4 years or something to just be like, oh yeah, I'm the CEO of the company. It sounds strange, but anyway, you can just fake it till you make it. All that stuff is really true.
Well, I think a lot of people, a lot of us just have some version of imposter syndrome, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
things run into. Was there a moment which got you to be like, you know what, I'm actually comfortable with this role. I can actually say I'm CEO without having to think about it. Was there a magic moment in there somewhere, or just take time?
I mean, the thing that I realized about myself, another thing is that I really like, in addition to liking building things, I like learning things. And the way you learn things is like you put yourself a little outside your comfort zone. So I kind of treated every situation, and by the way, being a co-founding company or building a company, it's constantly putting yourself outside your comfort zone, where, you're gonna, like, almost every week something happens where, I've never done it before, where if I tried doing my average day today 5 years ago, it would be like completely overwhelming. But every time you do it, you get stronger. And so I started to appreciate the idea of feeling a little outside my comfort zone. Like that was a good day. Like, oh man, I got to talk to,
What was the most uncomfortable thing you remember from that era where you were pushed outside your comfort zone?
Well, so I remember like, this wouldn't be like that out of the ordinary today, but like at that time, something that was, remember like a stressful day or something would be like, okay, my head of engineering came in and quit. And not only did he quit, he's like, this thing is fucked up and it's never gonna work. And so like this guy's quitting with me too. I'm like, okay, great. And then
They
like,
regret that now, by the way. They
Sorry?
probably regret that right now.
well, yeah, I mean, everybody go on their own path. But I mean, and then, the next thing would be like, oh, the site is offline and like we just lost like $40,000 for this customer. And then, we just got sued by this person. And, oh, by the way, like we have to evacuate the building and no one got any lunch today and everyone's pissed about, so it's just like a series of things like that. But now, now I'm more thinking about like congressional testimony and, whatever.
You leveled up, Brian. Leveled up.
Yeah, so that's how I started to think of that as like actually kind of fun in a weird way, which was like learning and pushing yourself outside the comfort zone.
I want to talk about you being level-headed during a stressful time, because one of the interesting stressful time I want to talk about is one of the crypto winters where you had a significant percentage of your company quit.
Yeah.
And, talk to us about that, because that is a situation which a lot of companies do not come back from, CEOs don't come back from. What happened? What did you do during it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're all aware that crypto's gone through many cycles, and I think what was that period? It was like 2015 to 2017 or something like that. That was a pretty long winter there, and I remember a lot of the other companies in the space, they had pivoted to sort of blockchain, and they were building like software for banks and stuff like that. And the first like year, people were kind of like, all right, we're gonna try something. After like a year, 18 months, people started to get really disillusioned. I mean, people started resigning. They were like even finding ways to like sell their stock in the private markets and stuff like that. And I think we had about like 25% attrition that year.
Wow.
Maybe 25.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like
But it's also because the rest of the tech industry was kind of going about normally, right? And
yeah.
you were off here, potentially in a situation where your company could have died.
Yeah. And this is like one of the challenges, of course, as a founder is like you often, you're reading all this stuff too, and you're like, I don't know, shit, nothing's working. Like I'm feeling kind of down about it. But then you want to kind of get in front of the company and try to put on a good face because you're kind of worried like those 3 people are going to quit. And then like, what are you going to do? And so it's this, one thing I realized is like, you can't just go up there and bullshit people because they can kind of see through it, or at least for me, they could. And I realized like there's actually good power in a leader in being vulnerable, right? So I tried to just kind of lean into that and like go up in front of the team and be like, things kind of suck, like I'm not feeling good about it. Like this thing I saw, that really pissed me off, to be honest. And like, I'm really worried about this. And now at least they're thinking, okay, well, at least he's not like out to lunch. He's like kind of, and then it's like, you don't feel like you have to have all the answers too. Like leadership is about bringing the teams together to help solve. So it's like, so here's what we're going to do about it. I want to meet with these 5 people after this, and we're going to come up with a strategy on X and Y, and sort of bring them into the solution, right? And say like, hey, I want you to come present what you think we should do about this on Friday. In other words, I don't have a fucking clue what to do, but like now at least they feel involved in like creating the solution instead of just like everybody looking to you to be like, what is Brian going to do? So these little things kind of helped us get through it. And frankly, at that point, I was like, if we have to pivot this company to just build software for banks, like, I don't really want to do that. So maybe I'd rather give the money back to the investors and just shut it down than to go do that. So fuck it, we're staying with crypto. And then it turned out to be a great decision, obviously, because when everybody else pivoted, and then we came out of it stronger.
So one thing that also about Coinbase is, you folks have kind of expanded into multiple different categories over the years, multiple adjacencies, etc. And I think a lot of times, companies, the question companies have is, how do I expand? And expand could be any number of things. It could be expand to an adjacent product line. It could be a new market, maybe a different tier, any number of things. So, as you folks have expanded in multiple different ways over the years, obviously, the Coinbase of now is very different than the Coinbase of 10 years ago. How did you maybe walk us through 1 or 2 key expansion decisions and how we went about that?
Yeah, well, this is always a constant topic that comes up inside companies because it's another one of those things where you can mess it up on either side. You can basically become so distracted that you try to do a million things and then you do none of them well. And this is a common thing people say about focus, the value of focus. And Steve Jobs had that great one about saying no, 1,000 times or whatever it was. On the other side, if the industry is really, moving towards some new thing and you don't do it, then you can be a one-hit wonder company and have basically a culture of incrementalism that we just optimize this one thing that we happen to find that worked, that we never get to the next thing and the next thing. Think about Netflix staying on DVD rentals or something instead of streaming, or whatever favorite example you want. So I realized early on that it was funny. Sometimes in the exact same day, I'd get one group of employees telling me like, why are we doing so many goddamn things? Like, we should focus on this. And then the next meeting I'd be in, they'd be like, how the hell do we not have like an NFT project? Like, this is obviously like this huge thing, right? So we came up with this framework, we call it like 70-20-10. And actually we borrowed this from Google. We didn't even come up with it, but it's like basically a resource allocation methodology. 70% of the resources are on the core thing, which makes most of your revenue. 20% is on these adjacent bets. 10% are on venture bets, which are, really ambitious, high risk. If they work, it's great. Most of them don't. And that's allowed us to sort of have some irons in the fire on big potential future things while also not losing focus on the core. Coinbase today does have kind of a lot of products. I mean, it's like 10 or 12, depending on how you count it. Some of them are more like features than products. But I like it. And for me, it's exciting to like always be trying to build new things. There's no one right way to do it. I mean, some CEOs would probably say we should be more focused. I don't know. I kind of like having the portfolio of bets. And just as an example, like USD coin, the stable coin, is something that, we started with like a 2-person team. We just started working on that, and it's turned out to be a major revenue driver for us in this down market. So you never really know what the things are that are going to do well and which ones that don't. So I like kind of having a portfolio.
Okay, I want to get to, recent years. And one of the last 2 years, when I think about Coinbase, one of the critical moments was your post on being a mission-driven company, during obviously all the events of, I think, 2020, early 2020 rather. So talk to us about that, because in some ways, I think how you handle that, what you went through, kind of shifted the Overton window. And I now see so many other companies. Sometimes something gets memed into existence, and you see other companies adapt that. And I see a lot of other companies now be like, we are mission oriented, mission focused. So talk to us about what led up to that, and what being mission focused means.
Yeah. So some of you may end up going through this shift at your companies, which is that when we started off, I mean, we were 20 people, 50 people, all in an office, a space like this, and we all knew each other. We knew what everybody was working on, and we all felt very aligned. And it's kind of like Dunbar's number is 150 people. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And we started to get to maybe like a little over 150, like 200, 300, 400. And I noticed for the first time, by the way, we started to be on different floors of the building, or maybe even like an office in New York, or like people started to feel a little divided. And I started to notice basically like factions almost started to develop within the company, where people started to say, I'm not on Team Coinbase, I'm on like Coinbase New York, or I'm on like Coinbase wallet, or like, and there even people started to make this swag, like the t-shirts and stuff that would say Coinbase wallet. And at one point, this is probably a little extreme, but I actually banned all swag that didn't just say Coinbase. Like you couldn't be like, I'm on like the Coinbase design team or something. It's like we're all on one team, right?
Yeah, the guy wearing Coinbase t-shirt right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you ever see a t-shirt that's Coinbase something else,
Learn it.
It's more rare. But so anyway, obviously the events around the world were happening at that point, and like one thing that we would always do an open Q&A in front of the company, kind of like we're going to do later here. And when it got to be 500 people, like 800 people, something shifted in the company where it started to feel a little bit more like we weren't all on the same team. I was, like some politician they were holding accountable, or it became a little bit like social media or something like that, where people were chatting in Slack and like just, over text, like all nuance gets lost. It's kind of like a social media flame war. And basically the company kept getting into these fights and distractions, and the questions that I was getting in the Q&A were not about the product we're building or the mission or the challenges we were having with competition and things like that. It was like, Brian, what do you think about XYZ like social issue in the world? And why did somebody say this? And do you agree with it or whatever? And it became like, first it became kind of uncomfortable. First because like I was like, this is not really related to what we're all here to work on, but I guess if people want to ask about it, it's fine. And then it became actually a bigger and bigger distraction with like basically people fighting internally and debating all these difficult things which were not super relevant to what we were doing. It culminated in a walkout. Yeah, and actually like maybe 400 employees like just basically stopped working in protest. This was due to, basically an employee kind of pinned me on the open mic and was like, are we going to support BLM? And I said, I don't know. And he's like, that's not good enough. I need to know, are we going to do it or not? This was a time when every company was posting it. And I basically deferred to answer because I hadn't like researched it. I didn't know, I found out later they wanted to defund the police and various things. It wasn't like a simple human right thing. And so I deferred to answer. The walkout happened, and and then I got everybody to come back to the office, but I was like, something feels weird here. Like, we're not here to solve every social issue in the world. We're here to focus on work. And I eventually came up with this post, which I put out there, and I knew it was going to be super controversial. 5% of employees took the exit package.
How did the process was? Because that was at the time, there's like a press, the Times was doing this thing. There's a lot going on. I decided to write a post because it was not a popular thing to do. I know other CEOs, we both know CEOs who wanted to do that, but didn't for any number of reasons. So what was your psychology? What led to that post?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a CEO, you never want to like create unnecessary negative distraction for the company. And I knew that this was going to be painful from the headlines and everything. But I think the thing that I also felt like we were not in alignment. Like I was failing as a leader because as a leader, you have to provide clarity and like, this is what the company is going to be about. Like you can opt into that, you can opt out of it. But I was basically just walking on eggshells, kind of like, I don't know what to say to anybody about any of this stuff because I'm afraid they're all just going to get mad at me or whatever. And so I was neglecting my duty. And I think the thing that finally pushed me over the line to do it was I realized, like, I don't want to be CEO if this is the job. Like, I don't want to basically have to just answer difficult societal questions about all these things which I frankly don't feel qualified to talk about. And just deal with internal flame wars, like that doesn't sound fun. I came into this because I want to build great stuff that helps improve the world. That's what I want the company to be about.
And so I was basically, I was actually contemplating, I was like, maybe I should leave. I was like almost like, should I resign the job? Is this like the job of a tech CEO today? And I talked with a couple of friends of mine and they're like, you're crazy. Like, do not resign this job. Like if this is making you feel uncomfortable, there's probably a bunch of people in the company it's making feel uncomfortable too. And you don't need to go, they need to go. And it was really hard to tell like what % of the company actually felt the same way, because it was, there was a very vocal group of people who were very, kind of leading this, I guess, internally. And what I did is actually I went and spoke with some of our ERGs, our employee resource groups, and I basically asked them directly. I was like, including our black ERG, I was like, do you want the company to be about this, or like, what do you care about? And they basically were like, we just want to come into work and be respected and do good stuff and learn things and so I was like, I'm not hearing this from our ERGs. I'm hearing it from a very vocal group of people. And so my intuition was that it's a small group of people. It's not like 60% of the company that feels this way, but it felt like 60% of the company might quit if I did this. So it was very scary. But I basically did it because I felt like either I'm going to leave or they're going to leave. And so I decided to make it clear what I wanted to do, and then turned out to be 5% of people left instead of 60. We didn't really know.
Yeah, well, I think I've seen so many companies now adopt that. So I think we're all happy that you didn't quit. Maybe one last question, and then before I turn to the audience, which is, it's been an eventful year in crypto, to put it mildly. Just looking upon the future, the next year, 2-3 years, kind of curious to get your thoughts on how do you think things are going to play out? What interests you? What excites you? Just your thoughts on the future broadly next few years.
Yeah, well, I think this is like obviously a difficult period in crypto where FTX blow-up has caused a lot of regulatory scrutiny. People are feeling kind of down. The headlines are bad. It's actually probably the best time to build in down markets. I'm a big believer in that. Typically in every down market, a lot of people who are in it for the wrong reasons, they kind of get out, who wanted to get rich quick or whatever, but the builders keep building, and then usually the seeds of the next upswing get planted in these down periods. So I'm super bullish about it. What I'm trying to do right now at Coinbase is make sure that we have some portion of the team who's dealing with some of the regulatory policy stuff, and I can talk about that for a minute. But I also, the other part of the team, I'm like, don't get distracted by all this negative stuff, and like we need to keep innovating. And that's why we've been launching things like Base, the L2 that we put out, and we just acquired like One River Digital Asset. We're trying to keep doing stuff to show that there's progress happening in this industry, and we're not going to let the haters get us down, so to speak. But yeah, as an industry, we need to go figure out the policy side. And I think that the good news is that from my time in DC, and I know Andreessen Horowitz is spending a ton of time there as well, there's strong bipartisan support to get clear crypto legislation passed that would allow this industry to exist here in the US and flourish, which is really good. But there is an element in DC that is sort of trying to capitalize on this moment. Some of it's positive, some of it's negative. The positive side of it is like, okay, let's make sure consumers are protected and there's not too much risk in the system. The negative component of it is some people think crypto is all bad, and they're just misinformed or ignorant or have their own motives. I don't really know why, but they actually want to use it as a moment to attack crypto. And so we need to basically make sure that the 50 million or so people in the United States who have used crypto help elect representatives that are going to advocate for their beliefs and for this technology. So we're trying to get the crypto community organized. In a democracy, the government works for the people, not the other way around. So as long as people keep using crypto and benefiting from it, eventually the government is going to get to the right place. So we launched this thing, Crypto 435, which is sort of referring to the 435 congressional districts around the US. But we're trying to get the crypto user base more and more engaged, like call their congressman, show up at these town halls, donate $100, and like in the 2024 the 2024 elections, we're going to see, I think, a number of seats get decided by the crypto vote, and that's like kind of going to be our moment as an industry where we grow up and we're taken seriously in DC.
And what about the technology and product side for crypto? What excites you and interests you in the next few years?
Oh man, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm bullish on decentralized social. I think that's yeah, I think we need to get decentralized identity.
Sorry, we had a whole thing here.
Decentralized identity is great. Like once you have the profiles, you can connect it in the social graph. I think DeFi gaming is cool. I think just getting the scalability of the chains to improve where every transaction by default is like a penny or less, like the layer 2 stuff is really good. We need to get the market structure even more developed with derivatives and things like that, more in the centralized space. But I mean, the decentralized stuff is even more exciting for the long term. So.
Yep. Okay, that's enough from me. Okay, I want to hear from folks here. Line up and yeah, ask Brian all the hard stuff. Oh wow, let's go. Yeah, go for it.
Web 2.5 gaming economy platform in phase one. So I'm Canadian, you're American. My question is, in 2023, do you think the US is the best country to build a Web3 startup? Or is it Singapore or Dubai or something like that?
That's a great question. That's exactly the kind of question I'm hoping people go ask at these town halls for the next congressional elections. But, man, depends probably what crypto app you're building. I mean, the US has a great set of infrastructure and investors, so you can get access to capital, things like this event right here. But I don't know. I mean, like every financial hub in the world is trying to attract crypto talent and crypto companies. Like in the UK, like Rishi Sunak, the PM, he's just like super positive crypto. Like Hong Kong, Singapore, you know, the EU just passed the legislation. The UAE is super positive. So I'm bullish on America long term, but it probably depends more like where you live and where your network is. I'm not sure I would relocate to go to start the company there, but the US is not looking amazing at the moment from a crypto regulatory point of view.
Thanks. And for the record, if we raise in the US and move to Dubai, we're not rugging anyone. Thanks.
Okay.
You know, I would say that look, I'm an American citizen. I chose to come here. I'm an immigrant. I love this place, and I think like all of us, we want to see this. But you know, I was in Dubai a couple of weeks ago for the very first time, and I was just blown away by the crypto energy. And so, some folks, I was like, man, I'm just blown away. The energy, you know, the government being so into it, and there are a lot of other interesting places. But like I said, you know, like we're here in the US, and hope this works out here. All right, next.
Hey, Brian, thanks for sharing your perspective today. I was just wondering, can you comment on the significance of Base for Coinbase itself and the broader crypto industry?
Yeah, well, Base is the layer 2 that we launched recently. And I mean, the significance of it is that we're trying to help crypto be more scalable and more usable. So obviously layer 2s help with scalability. There's a few, from a usability point of view, there's a few things that we can do in our own apps and suite of products that I think just try to lower friction. So for an example, maybe with USD Coin, we could have transaction-free payments, or you know, if we integrate L2 into like, you know, our NFT platform or into the dApp marketplace, or just sort of, we want to make the default of everything be fast and cheap. And so hopefully that'll enable a bunch of applications with an L2 that we have a little bit more input on, even though it's decentralized.
Thank you.
Hey, Brian. Lewis here from Shield Security. I wanted to ask you about Coinbase NFT and where that fell in the priorities that you see you guys copied from Google. Was that like a venture bet? And where do you see Coinbase, their position in NFTs long term?
Yeah, Coinbase NFT was definitely a venture bet, and it still is actually. I'm pretty bullish on NFTs long term. I think there's a ton of stuff. I don't know if you're working on an NFT thing, but I know that recently the market has shifted in NFTs a little bit towards these more pro trader tools like Blur. But I think the utility case for NFTs is probably pretty massive going forward. I think it could be in decentralized social, where every post is an NFT, or you could imagine new forms of like Spotify or YouTube or Instagram, where every image or video or audio is a NFT. You know, like concert tickets, DeFi gaming, like the in-game assets. So even just like getting access to this building, like people's badges or I don't know, various things, could be pretty credentialing, universities, even like scientific research, like licensing things. These could all be done with NFTs. So yeah, we're going to keep investing in NFTs at Coinbase and just try to make it. The main thing we're doing is that, you know, typically what people would do is like buy crypto on Coinbase, move it to a self-custodial wallet with a browser extension, and then they would do something with NFTs. And like, it's actually pretty amazing how many people used it, given that there was that many steps. If we can make it where you already have your crypto on Coinbase, but you click one or two more things and you can just do it right in the app, that's obviously easier. But we want to make it easy for any dApp to be used inside Coinbase as well. So it's not like we want to embrace the third-party ecosystem essentially.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for the thoughts so far. Curious how Coinbase balances straightforward bets and pragmatism versus kind of taking stances on things that you really believe in, staking as an example, and even using like MEV boost?
Yeah. So there's definitely, okay, where do I start? When you're an earlier stage company, I think that you don't really have resources to do too many things. So you probably just want to have, if you're like 10 people or something, you probably just want to have like one thing.
For sure.
The CEO is like, oh, we're going here. But as we got to be a bigger company, I realized good ideas were coming from various places, and actually like there was too much going on where I couldn't even keep track of it at a certain point. Once you're like 1,000 people, or the industry just got bigger and bigger, I couldn't read all the research papers, like anything even close to that. So there's a great stories in history, like for instance, Steve Wozniak, he was an employee at HP, and I guess he went to his boss and was like, hey, I think we should make a personal computer, and his boss said no, and so he co-founded Apple. And so we started to have this like Coinbase mafia out there, like people building different, and I was like, okay, that's great. First of all, we want to support that, but if they want to build stuff internally, let's make sure we're not like missing out on good ideas. So we basically created a forum internally where people can come pitch twice a year and say this, basically if they want to get funded new venture bets internally. And one of the key things about that is like, I don't want to have it be a committee, like designed by committee, where it's like, okay, you need to get all 6 people on the panel to vote yes, and you get your thing funded. Basically, if any one of the people, and they're like different VPs and stuff like that who have their own budget, any one of them can basically say, all right, I'm going to champion that and fund it out of my own budget. And so you only need to get one yes. And we're trying to make it a little bit more like pitching a bunch of venture capitalists. So that's a that's a much bigger topic about how big companies manage to do innovation, but some of it has to come bottom up. It can't just come from the CEO.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Excellent talk. My name is Isaiah, also from Shield. My question is twofold, actually. So the first one is, what were the design criteria that you used at the time when you founded Coinbase, as opposed to maybe finding like something like a Uniswap, given you had read the Bitcoin white paper? Like, what were the trade-offs, or what were the design criteria? And the second question is, for a founder now in 2023, how should we think of developing either the approach of going talk to customers, build product, versus worrying about kind of the protocol, token incentives for perhaps a community-based approach that can create a more decentralized system?
Yeah, got it. So yeah, you're right. I mean, the design, when we were getting started, there was really just Bitcoin. That was the only thing. And I kind of realized there was going to need to be like a more centralized bridge between TradFi and this world. So the architecture decision was a little simpler when I was getting started, but you're right. Now a lot of these tools have become decentralized. And if I understand your question correctly, it's basically like how to think about how decentralized should your product be today, or something like that. Do I have that right?
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of times, sometimes you'll talk to some people and you're like, oh, like, is it decentralized enough? But ultimately, I do think perhaps like you're just thinking about how do we actually solve a problem and create value, and whatever path that like the company should become based on like where we are at this point in time is really where we should go with that. But it's not exactly clear, if perhaps focusing on the ecosystem is it a distraction, or is it actually worth spending more time, even if it's not maybe leading to paying customers today?
Yeah. No, I totally get it. I mean, it's probably a little bit specific to each company, and I hesitate to give some general advice, but I think basically you need to find the sweet spot of like, be on the frontier where you're building something novel, but don't go so far that it's like impossible to get anything done because the tools are so nascent and like that you just don't actually end up creating customer value. But you can definitely play in that space a little bit. Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of these apps that are sort of Web 2.5, it's like, okay, let's have a smart contract, or like let's have something tokenomics related, but shoot, like the video uploading thing just doesn't work in a decentralized way yet, and there's a few things on the horizon. Try to see if you can take a day or something and build a quick prototype, and if none of it's really ready with IPFS or whatever, just like screw it, we'll put it on AWS for now and try to fix it later. I mean, oftentimes you end up building stuff and you're like, we'll fix it later, and then like 10 years later it's still running the same way. So you always have to be a little careful of that, but I don't think I have anything like I can nail down without more details on the specific example.
Actually, I think there are a couple of failure modes I think we sometimes see. One is, somebody's building a product and they're getting the crypto incentives wrong, what the protocol incentives are. I often see the reverse where sometimes we'll talk to a founder and they've spent a lot of time thinking about the incentives, the tokenomics, etc. But they haven't talked to like an actual human being and like what,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, somebody has to go deliver food or do the thing. And, and so they spend all the time only on the, the protocol design. And I think they're both failures in both modes.
Yeah.
For like, one of the things I like about Forecaster, not just because we're involved with them, because I think one of the things Dan Romero, Coinbase Mafia, by the way, he's done a great job of is trying to balance both. He spends a lot of time talking to his customers, DMs them, etc., and then trying to map that onto the crypto incentive side. So that's an example. I think I'm trying to strike a balance. We've definitely seen failures on both sides.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hey, Brian. Brandon here. Thank you for the talk. I think your story is incredibly inspiring, especially as a technical founder and kind of a leader in the industry. So thank you. I got a lot of questions. I'm going to keep it brief. The first is you talked about the power of delegation, how you might have been able to accelerate had you delegated earlier, but you also talked about hiring slow. So what is ultimately the right answer in terms of being able to do delegation while at the same time not bringing in too much headcount? The second question is, now that you have delegated effectively, do you still get the same fulfillment as when you used to merge the PR and make the product better?
Yeah. Great question. So thanks for calling that out. As I was saying it, I was like, I think I just contradicted myself. But you're right. Okay. So don't hire too quickly, I think is really good advice, especially pre-product market fit, right? Sometimes people are like, well, we don't have product market fit, we need more people. And they hire more people and everything actually goes slower instead of faster. So I like keeping teams super small, like, 2 people, 3 people, no more than 5, kind of pre-product market fit. And once you get product market fit though, and the boulder's rolling down the hill instead of you pushing it up, and you're like, oh my God, like, you'll know, it'll be like backlogs and like outages, and the scaling issues will be your biggest thing instead of like getting anybody to come care. That's when you probably need to start delegating more. But yeah, it's complicated because there's also a failure mode of bringing in like a senior exec or someone like too early into a company, where that can have like a 50-50 hit rate, and you'll have to part ways with a lot of people. Some of them will stick and some of them won't. And so you can also delegate to people from within who are showing promise, right? And develop internally, which is a better default probably way to start. Okay, so that was the first question. What was the second one?
The second question was, as a technical founder, now that you have delegated effectively, do you still get the same joy and fulfillment as when you used to actually ship the code yourself?
Oh, I definitely feel a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment from it. It's different though. I mean, so occasionally I'll still jump in and try to write some code like during a hackathon or something, or actually the team sort of threw me a bone during the base launch where they were like, you should do the final PR, and like
we'll merge it, wink, wink, yeah.
Yeah. I like kind of dusted off, barely got that one going. But what I enjoy is actually, with our venture bets, I get to like find that same satisfaction of working on brand new stuff with new teams. They actually removed my GitHub access because, like we have all these like hackers trying to break into my stuff, and they're like, let's minimize your attack surface area. So like I don't even have access to a lot of stuff.
Is it a polite way of saying like, Brian, your code sucks, but we don't?
Yeah, it was probably that reason. They just didn't want to tell me. But yeah, but I have to say it's very fulfilling on the other side as well, because the cool thing about it is just like we get to try stuff. I'm always learning new things. So as long as it's advancing the business, that's kind of what I get my enjoyment from. It's one sort of mental shift on this is like, sometimes I have people come in the company and they're like, oh, like I'm a really good React Native engineer or whatever. I'm like, okay, that's great, but like you figure out the way to add value to the company. Drive your sense of fulfillment from what moved us closer to the mission, not like, did you get to use your favorite tool? And I try to do that as a founder too. Like sometimes the job sucks, right? It's like, I'm literally just, like we don't have any, early on we had no, like we couldn't hire any good finance people. I was like, oh my God, I need to like learn accounting, like how to read a balance sheet and an income statement, and just, or literally I was just like ordering food for the team or picking up trash on the floor or like whatever. So do whatever is the most important thing that helps them move the business forward. That's what you should drive your value from. And so I can get that from coding, but I can also get it from almost anything else.
Thank you.
Just on the delegation point, how do you know when you've delegated too much and we are too removed from the details and something isn't working? Because I've seen a lot of founders one trap where they have Series B, Series C, or something working. Somebody says you should get an adult exec, right? You get like a seasoned person who talks a particular way, and then it's not working for whatever reason, and then you spend 6 months a year, you're removed from the details, and you don't have the good feedback loop because you don't actually know what's happening. Have you dealt with that? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, you're right. Man, I'm gonna contradict myself again here, but I think you're right. Like micromanaging is actually kind of underrated. There's sort of like a meme in Silicon Valley that, good managers delegate, and I may have just fallen into that trap a little bit myself. I think I was trying to make an adjacent point, but anyway, it's very true. Like, so what I actually like to do now is I can't possibly be micromanaging everything. There's way too much stuff. But what I do is I basically just try to gather info on like progress updates, how's it going? And basically once in a while I'm like, there's smoke over here. It's going too slow. I'm getting weird answers. 2 people just transferred to another team. They don't like them. And then I'm like, okay, micromanage. I'm gonna go down and keep digging until I find out like what the issue is here. And usually it's usually like you need to change a person, you need to change the strategy, you need to go do surgery on it. And then like, I'll go micromanage the next thing. And so it's almost like that Eye of Sauron or whatever, like just whatever is like the biggest issue, something's fucked up in your company at all times. It's just like, okay, and I'm just gonna dive into this over here. So that's fine.
Eye of Sauron.
Hi, I want to say thank you for sharing. And I'm Nikita from Chain Patrol, and actually worked at Coinbase before this.
Nice.
I want to ask, in the early stages of hiring your team, what did your team composition look like? And was there anybody that you kind of like, any roles or people that you brought on that like, maybe like initially you didn't think were going to be like that important, but like turned out to be like really impactful?
Well, I mean, the classic, just to start with the basics, I mean, engineers, right? Like if you're building something in crypto, you probably need people who can write the actual code. It'd be hard to just like outsource all that or something. There was, I don't know if this is helpful. Like the third employee that we hired was this guy Olaf Carlson Wee, who went on to create Polychain Capital and things. And he was a really unique person. I mean, he was totally unqualified on paper. He was actually previously a lumberjack, and he was this like spiritual kind of guy. He'd written his thesis in college on Bitcoin, and then he decided to have like a walkabout type spiritual experience, and he was a lumberjack for like a summer. But then he came in and interviewed, and basically what we were interviewing for at the time is we needed somebody to do customer support. And it wasn't so much that he was like qualified to do that. He was just like super hungry and smart and brilliant, and he was like, I'll do anything. Like this is the future. And it was like he had this really infectious energy. And I realized we sort of took a long shot on him and gave him the job, and he turned out he crushed it. And then he went on to do a whole bunch of other things inside Coinbase. But the thing that I realized about that was that startups, like you need to develop a sense of optimism internally, because what you're trying is crazy and it's really difficult, and there's just going to be all this setback after setback. And so once in a while I would see a startup where like there's somebody who's just kind of negative, and my instinct was always, as a founder, I was like, we need to cut that out like right away. So I'd just go talk to him, be like, what we're trying to do is really hard, like this is contagious, and I can't have you recruiting people into your negativity, and so this is like last chance, like help us move forward. Or and if it ever didn't work out, I would exit people, because if you don't believe you can actually accomplish something in the future, like, and someone's recruiting you into their thing, like you're not going to do it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nitya, building Capsule. I really resonated with what you were talking about, from going with like the fire alarm and lunch being a problem to like congressional hearings. Like, what has your general approach been to growth, as well as kind of making difficult decisions?
Growth in terms of like me as a leader, or so I mentioned executive coaches. I would say there was a handful of periods. Actually, I'd say for most of Coinbase, I've had some kind of executive coach. I've tried maybe like 3 or 4 different ones over the years. Some of them are like former CEOs who can give you more tactical advice, and others are like therapists, honestly. And actually, both are really useful. It's part of the whole challenge of being a founder is like managing your own psychology, right? And dealing with all the kind of difficult feelings that come with that, and also just like the motivation. And what you'll often find is like, every 2 years or so, I'd start to feel burned out. I'm like, oh man, like this is, you just wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, I don't know, this is like rough. I don't want to get out of bed. And like, and a lot of founders struggle with this. Like I've seen people like, gain a ton of weight, lose a ton of weight, like get addicted to prescription drugs, like develop all kinds of like coping mechanisms, like self-medicating things, right? And so what I would try to do is every 2 years, I'd talk with these coaches and I'd be like, okay, what's the part of the job that you're getting energy from? What's neutral and what's negative? And then oftentimes you'd take the stuff that's negative or neutral and you'd try to like hire someone and give them that responsibility, or just stop doing it entirely and see what happens, or random things like that. And there's always going to be some part of your job that's like stuff that you don't love. It's not to say like the whole thing is supposed to be fun, but things like that helped me develop a lot as a leader. So I would say that was part of it. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Oh, I was going to ask how you make difficult decisions.
Okay, so we actually developed, well, we didn't develop it, we stole it. We borrowed it. This idea, there's a decision-making framework that we use internally. It's called Rapid. And we borrowed it from, I think Bain came up with this, but a bunch of companies use it. And one thing that's really interesting is when you have a tough decision to make, or a company has a tough decision to make, what often ends up happening is like people all get in a room, or there's like a bunch of one-off phone calls happening, and people's tensions kind of get high. And at the end, it's like, who's even in charge of this? And someone's trying to veto it. And then we revisit the decision 2 weeks later because everyone's still pissed. And like, so there's just chaos when these decision-making things happen. So what this system, Rapid, I mean, you can go read about it, but it tries to choose up front, okay, who is the decider? Everybody has a role. You're a decider, you're giving input, you're an agree, whatever. And then what it does is it forces everybody to write their stuff their input in a document. So another issue is people don't feel heard, right? And they're like, well, you decided that before you even came and talked to me, like, and people get upset about all this stuff. So it's like, okay, everybody write what you think in the document. And then we're gonna meet and we're gonna talk about it. And everybody's read the document, so nobody can say, well, I wasn't heard. It's like, you were at the meeting, everybody read your thing in the document, right? So we've all read it. And what I ask people to do is like, be candid too, because another thing that happens in these companies is like, someone's there and they're like, oh, I think Brian thinks this, so I'm gonna say the same thing, right? And all these like weird, silly things happen. Anyway, you can go read about it. At the end, the decider writes their decision. People who don't agree, disagree, and commit. Now you've got a paper record of it. You can go back and look at it 6 months later when someone inevitably is like, why the hell are we doing this stupid thing? You're like, well, where's the Rapid document? You can read it, see who decided. Maybe we were wrong, maybe we were right. That's been a helpful one for me.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Last two questions.
Hi, Jay from Ethan ID. I was curious how you knew that Fred was the right person to found the company with.
Yeah, oh man, that's a good question. So I think that you want to find somebody who intimidates you a little bit. And what I mean by that is that you want to be like a little bit afraid that you're about to say something stupid, because that's, to me, that's sort of a sign of like mutual respect almost, of like, wow, I really trust that person. They're going to make me want to try harder because like they're like excelling and they're really impressive in various ways. I remember, so Fred and I, he had reached out when he saw the prototype, and we just came in and tried working together for a little bit. I remember after a few months, like some interesting stuff happened where, like I remember one day he came to me, he was like, I've been reading through all the stuff we've been doing about how to make this buy Bitcoin feature, and I'm pretty sure we're going to lose money on every trade. And I'm like, how can that be? That can't be right. And he like walked me through it on the whiteboard, and I was like, oh my God, he's right. And so I would say people who challenge you on your ideas, and occasionally they're right or they change your mind, that's a good sign. And if you haven't found a co-founder, my best advice is like just keep making progress, and eventually signs of success will cause the right person to show up. Like before Coinbase got actually officially into YC, and before I met Fred, I think for like a year or two I was like trying to find a co-founder, and I just completely failed. Like, and I tried co-founding with a couple people, like this one guy for briefly, and It didn't work out. And I was just like, this sucks. Like, I'm never going to find a co-founder. And but getting into YC, launching the prototype, and like randomly Fred messaged me one day. So like, yeah, just don't stop making progress, and eventually the right person will reach out to you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Last one.
Hey, David from Discope here. I'm curious what you're most excited for in decentralized social, and also how you see the opportunities for Coinbase as a sort of mass consumer app in that space.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a big topic. So I think decentralized social is pretty cool from a few different angles. One is that there's a lot of, it allows people to avoid censorship, right? It allows people to build different UIs that, like if you want to have like a safe mode that tries to filter out a lot of like, difficult content or whatever you want to call it, then you should be able to have that. If you want to just look at the raw stream of stuff, I think you should also be able to see that. So it allows people to sort of, for information to be free from like a freedom of speech point of view. I think it's really powerful. From a, not having all of your stuff owned by big tech companies point of view, it's really powerful. I think, I don't know, my guess is it'll unlock new types of business models for creators as well. So that's pretty cool. But honestly, this is like something that I'm spending like probably 2% of my time thinking about. If you're in that space, some of you all here are probably actually further along than I am on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing for the decentralized social part is like, one, obviously kind of, pro-censorship, anti-censorship stuff, that's interesting. But there was an era maybe 10, 12 years ago when you could build APIs. You had APIs on pretty much every social media company, and you could build clients, experiences, and be really bent away from that, right? Because of the ads-based model and the kind of the centralized effects of these companies. And for me, if you look at something like a Farcaster or Lens or the bunch of others, the idea that anybody can go build a client or go build an experience with no permission, that is really, really critical. The fact that you can actually have the right to exit. So you can sort of, it's really, what I think the internet should have been. Going all the way back, like when we were teenagers, like anybody could build on top of SNTP, or anybody could build a Twitter client for a period of years, or a Facebook client. So it's kind of that appeal of permissionless innovation, which I think like super interesting.
Yeah,
but
it feels totally right to me. I actually can't predict exactly what's going to happen there, but something about it seems awesome, which is a good indicator of like a fruitful ground for ideas.
Kind of the early energy of like 2004, 2005, Ajax, Web2, or the 90s, right? It has the kind of the same energy around it. And of course, it's super early, and who knows what's going to happen, but it does have that sort of that nerd energy, which I love.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there's a last question from the audience. Before I let you go, what is one parting thought you have for these folks? A lot of them are super early in their journey, barely started their company. Some of them are further along. What is like one final thing you'd like to tell them?
Well, I already told you my nugget about like don't die, basically, and just you need to grind it out like 2, 3, 4 years to like see if something breaks through. Otherwise, you haven't really tried it. So that's the first one. I guess the last one I'll leave you with is like, this is a great phrase which I like, which is action produces information. So sometimes if you can't really see that many moves ahead on the chessboard, and you're like, I don't know, is like decentralized social or gaming going to be big or whatever? It's just like, if you don't know what to do, just like do anything, because action will produce more information. So just like build something. It's almost certainly the wrong thing, but by the fact that you just built it, you then will see, oh, I should have done this, or somebody reaches out to you and like, your app sucks, but I wish you had done Y, or like, just action produces information. Keep moving. Startups are like sharks. If they stop swimming, they die. So,
yeah, don't die, build things. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Armstrong. Thank you.